You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Game Report, brought to you by Nerd to Know Media. Now today we have a special winter themed episode because our first guest is my very good friend Sine, who is a theatre producer, actor, writer, and everything, who has a company called Dream for Ireland. Here's to how are you doing?
Yeah, just, ticking away. I think getting more productive during the lockdown as it goes on. I think at the start, all of us who were very active in our careers, there was just kind of the first month was kind of like, oh, what do we do? There's still a lot of that, but there's more kind of things forming.
Okay, well, not to get too personal, but I believe you actually did have a theatre show that was supposed to go out this week. Would you like to talk a bit about that, or?
Yeah, so I was working on a kind of an absurd show called Griselle, based on the true story of Dublin's pig-faced lady. And I had gotten funding from the Dún Laoghaire County Council to do work and development of that, and the Lexicon had agreed to host it in kind, and that was meant to be on Friday. So I'm a bit bummed about that, but also I know a lot of people that have lost a lot more, and I just, it's more on hold, so I'm excited to get working on that once this is all over, but there's no set date as to when that's going to happen, but it is a very physical theater piece, and unfortunately you just got to wait it out, but it will be done again. I'm sure of it.
Okay, well, you mentioned that you were doing projects since the lockdown started. What kind of things have you been doing apart from gaming to fill the time?
Well, I've been working a lot on my writing, which is a relatively new skill for me, because a lot of the work that I do would be devised work or kind of work like practically working in a room. So it's been a challenge to work on writing, and I'm doing a screenwriting course with Mob Theatre Dublin, which is really good. Doing a lot of it's basically writing a screenplay in 6 weeks, so that's been good because it's a completely new area for me, so learning skills in that. I wrote a first draft of a one-woman show based on my diary entries from when I was a teenager, which was particularly eye-opening and creepy, and a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be brave enough to go to my diaries back from even 2 years ago, let alone teenage.
Yeah, it's quite funny. And I thought I would have to, obviously I've changed a lot of it, for the sake of dramatic narrative and privacy and everything. But I thought I would have to change a lot more, than I actually did end up in the first draft, just because, man, when you're a teenagers are so funny, like.
Well, I believe actually I cast you to play a teenager in a show way back when with Underdog, didn't I?
Yes. This was my first show. I think I was still a teenager. I was 19. I was only 19 or 20. That was like 7 years ago.
Yeah. So do you think your performance back then matched up to what you're reading in your diaries?
Well, that was Deb, so that was like 18, whereas a lot of what I'm writing, it goes from like age 13 to age like 17, 18. So it was interesting seeing the maturity of that. I mean, there's a big difference between 18-year-olds and 13, 14-year-olds, but definitely that level of intensity anyway. It was a fun part to play.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to work with you. Now, I also follow you quite avidly on Instagram and all the likes. And before we get into your list of games, you actually do a fair bit of comedy related to Pokemon and the like, don't you, on there?
Comedy related to Pokemon?
Yeah, I remember you went on this big long spiel about a Pokemon that was a teacup or something like that.
Oh, that was just one. I got very emotional playing Pokemon Sword, because Pokemon Yellow on the Game Boy was like a huge part of my like a lot of people,
Hmm.
a lot of people's childhood, but I hadn't really played any new ones, and I just went a little emotional on my Instagram story, and people seem to enjoy it just because I have always had Pikachu in my party in every single Pokemon game that I ever played, and it reached a time playing Sword where I realized I just couldn't have Pikachu or Raichu in my party because I had this adorable teacup Pokemon. I love the new Pokemon in the new Pokemon game. I just think they're so clever and funny. Usually the new Pokemon are a bit weird, but I quite like the new ones in Sword and Shield.
So I
Yeah.
suppose that could dovetail nicely with your sort of teenage diary show, the sort of growing up and saying goodbye to Pikachu type thing.
Yes, yes. I put that in a minute. It's like, goodbye, Pikachu. But, a special place in my heart. Just because he's not in my Pokemon party doesn't mean he's not in my Pokemon heart.
You're still going to Zoom and Skype him and all that.
Oh, yeah. We'll still have a meet up for tea or the Pokemon tea out of the, yeah.
All right. So
Anyway.
sorry for taking you down that weird sort of emotional cul-de-sac. But
Oh,
you
it's
mentioned
my
you mentioned a few games before we started recording that some of which I haven't actually heard of. The first of which is Vampire. What is that exactly?
Yes. I'm kind of going all over the place game wise because what happens is I get stuck on a boss for ages. And usually I get someone to help me with the boss, but because of lockdown, I'm just like, there's no one to help me. So Vampire, it was like half price or a bit more in the spring sales on the Switch. But I know it's on all the consoles. It's the same company that did Life is Strange, actually.
Oh, okay, well that's a good start.
Yeah, well, I liked Life is Strange, but I hated the end so much it ruined the whole game for me. But I know there's a lot of big fans, so we won't get into that rabbit hole. But I'm really enjoying Vampire. I think the fighting is really hard though. I think particularly now that I'm towards the end of it, the fighting gets a bit clunky. And I didn't realize when I started playing it, but it's set during the Spanish influenza in London. So I don't know how escapist it is.
Well, I mean, don't make any presumptions because, like, one of our guests on last week's show, Keith Byrne, he's actually been playing more post-apocalyptic games because he finds them relaxing, so that when he goes back to the real world, it's like much calmer by comparison.
Yeah, I am. No, I am enjoying it. It is really interesting that it's set during the Spanish influenza, but it's a good story, and essentially you play as a doctor who becomes a vampire and has a really strong beginning, and the score is amazing as well. It's this really like gothic like stringy score, and I hate horror stuff, so if you're not a fan of horror stuff, it's not going to be too scary for you. But what's interesting about it is the fastest way to level up is by killing civilians. You get loads of experience, but the way to get the most experience is to like talk to them and do missions for them. So you have to like get to know them.
Right.
So there's kind of that moral dilemma of like, do you kill them or not? So I'm trying to not kill anyone, but then the game is much easier if you do just kill civilians. But it also, there's like real world impacts in the story. Like you stop getting missions for them, or like the health status of the district will go down. But I'm really enjoying it. I will say that some of the bosses are really hard though.
Okay, so what kind of, because you mentioned Life is Strange, is this like a choose your way game, or is it an active combat game? Is it turn based? What kind of genre of game is this?
It's a lot more. It's I don't know if you heard of Remember Me, which was again the same company. That game, ironically, no one remembers, but it was a really good game on the PlayStation 3 and maybe Xbox. I don't know. And so it's fighting, but it's very story based. So you make decisions, and that your decisions activate the story. So it's that kind of stressful game where you have to like pause for like 5 minutes and be like, what do I do? What do I do? And then walking around killing various different creatures, and like the combat is interesting. I will think it is a bit clunky, but I think of it because it's not a very big company, so I feel like it's one of those things. the company had more money, they could have done a really good job. But I'm enjoying it anyway, and I definitely think it's worth picking up just for the score and the story and the dialogue choices. They do a thing where you can't go back on saves, so it saves automatically.
Right.
So it's they purposely do it that way. So if you want to go back and change the decision, you can't do that.
Yeah,
It's
because
the
that
whole
would
live
sort
with
of
your decision.
break the pressure, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And the voice acting's really good as well.
Okay, because I know a lot of people get stressed out by those type of games. Do you ever watch that Choose Your Way Black Mirror episode on Netflix?
Yes.
Yes, my sister tried to watch it, and she got to the very start, and the dad said, "Would you like cornflakes or Frosties?" And she goes, "I'm giving up. This is too stressful already. I can't handle it." So
Yeah.
I know that kind of choose your way with a big cost potentially can stress people out. But do you find it engaging? Do you?
I hate decisions, but I love decision-based games, because I'm really into story games. Like I just really feel like there's a weight to it. But I am also the type of person that will, if I come up with a big decision, I will leave it there. And like there's been some games where I've literally over an hour have just had the game running and has been sitting there, and like I hate myself for doing this, but like Googling like what's the best thing to do.
Yeah, I've done that with the Telltale games now and again, I must confess, or Mass Effect or any of them like.
Yeah.
But if
So
you can resist the urge to actually check what each outcome means, it is that much more satisfying, even if it's something bad. Because so many games are just like an amusement park. You're just like on the rails doing what the game needs you to do. And the story games really give you so much more personal input, don't they?
yes, it's like an interactive story. I mean, my favorite game of all time will always be Dragon Age
Oh,
Origins.
yeah. Well, same company as Mass Effect there, yeah. So it's good company. Excellent.
Just for those decisions.
Would you
What
recommend Vampire to beginners then? Or like who would you recommend it to?
I will say it does get the fighting does get quite difficult. There's kind of a knack to it once you pick it up. But some of the bosses were frustratingly hard. But then I'm not a very seasoned. Like I love video games, but I'm not particularly very good at them. I had to have you help me beat a lot of Final Fantasy.
Oh, the Final Fantasies. We could have an episode just on those easily. Like
Yes. I definitely think it's worth it, and I think just for the company, I think they need more money. Just for the score alone, it's definitely worth it. And you can play it on easy mode, and it's not that expensive on Steam, at least. I don't think it's on sale anymore on the Switch, but I know it's on all consoles, and I don't think it's very expensive on other consoles now. So I definitely would recommend it. I'm really enjoying it.
okay, and so you kind of preemptively answered my question, but where can people find this game then?
I know it's on the Switch, but it's on the PlayStation as well and computer. I think it might be on Xbox. It's one of those I think it's on everything.
Okay, that's excellent. That's a fantastic breakdown. So let's get to your next game, which is actually a very popular one, Breath of the Wild. I believe you started playing that when the lockdown started.
Yes, I was very, very, very fortunate in that literally the day before the schools shut down, my friend lent me Breath of the Wild. So it was kind of perfect timing because I've been wanting to play that game for a very long time. So that was kind of my lockdown. The start of my lockdown was playing Breath of the Wild. And so that was really, really interesting. It's a beautiful game. And it's one of those games where I don't know if you're ever playing a game and you're like, I wonder if I can do this. And with Breath of the Wild, it was just like, I wonder if I can do, I can. I wonder if I can do, I can. I wonder
like what examples do you have?
Well, like, there's one of the first, I was just there, I was like, I wonder if I can chop down this tree. Oh, I can chop down this tree. I wonder if I can climb this tree. Oh, I can climb this tree. I wonder if what happens if I can put these apples in the fire. Oh, you can cook. It's a game that really rewards discovery.
Okay. So, like, is it, I have played other Zelda games before, but I haven't played Breath of the Wild. Like, in a nutshell, what's kind of the plot of it?
Um, I played at the start of lockdown, and already I'm like, oh wow, it feels like I played it a year ago. Time has lost all meaning. It's really like you wake up. Basically, it's set in like I'm not 100% sure on this, so I'm a lot of Zelda fans might be given out to me, but I believe it's kind of set in 100 years after Ocarina of Time, in a timeline where you actually didn't defeat Ganon at the end of Ocarina of Time. So it's basically, the premise is, you wake up as Link with no memories, and there's kind of some subplots that you can do, collecting memories, and there's no order really in which you have to do things, which is kind of nice. So I was talking to a friend of mine who was playing it at the same time as me, and we were doing completely different things, like going for completely different dungeons and stuff. So it kind of has that old school feeling of just, when you're like, in old Zelda games, you had to have like a certain weapon to go to a certain dungeon.
Yeah.
Whereas this is just so open, you can like just kind of go anywhere.
Okay, so I mean, that kind of brings me to the big question I want to ask you in this episode, which is, why have these games in particular been relaxing for you during the lockdown? Is it the immersion? Is it just the feeling that it lets you play and use your imagination? Like, what draws you in?
I think I've always been into big story games, and also music. So like, the music in Zelda is beautiful, and like like, I think that's one thing that brings me back to games, is really good music, because it really creates the world. And I think particularly for me, like, I'm quite new to I got my Switch at Christmas, but in that I was kind of on the PlayStation 3. Like, I didn't have a new generation. And it's, as well as just having the time, because I think a lot of those games require a big, like, they require commitment, because if you don't play, at least once every 2 or 3 days, you kind of forget what you're doing, and it's hard to get back.
I must confess, I've never actually completed Ocarina of Time for that reason. I always play it to a certain extent, put it down for 2 or 3 days, and then cannot remember for the life of me what I have to do or where in the world I have to go.
Yeah, I mean, I had that with Majora's Mask. I low-key hate Majora's Mask. It's just so stressful.
Yeah, I think it's got obviously it's a brilliant game, but like, it's got the same problems that Ocarina of Time has in the getting lost factor, and then you add in time loops as well. So you got to pay attention and get through that quickly, like.
Yeah. Well, Breath of the Wild, it's crazy, because it's like someone took Ocarina of Time and decided to cross it with Skyrim or Witcher. So it's kind of, it kind of reinvents itself as a Zelda game. It doesn't, like, there's only 4 dungeons, which a lot of Zelda games have a lot more than that. But the 4 dungeons are quite unique, and like, so beautiful and so rewarding. I do feel the story was a little lacking, is the only thing with it, but the gameplay was just so excellent, and it has the weapons breaking, which is a new thing in Zelda. So it has you thinking a lot more about what weapons you use.
Okay, so it's very much a sort of, you mentioned like the Skyrim connection, but it's very much a sort of Zelda for grown-ups, like.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a massive Zelda fan. Like, I played Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker when I was older than a lot of people had, so I didn't have the same nostalgia that I think a lot of people have with the Zelda games. And a lot of the time, they kind of like I don't like games making me feel stupid. Like I don't know how anyone got through any of the Zelda games without any sort of walkthrough. I do feel, I think Breath of the Wild is a lot more accessible than other Zelda games.
Okay. All right, well then, on that note, that's a pretty good segue into your third game, which is Witcher 3. I believe that's on the Switch as well, right?
Yes, I'm not actually playing it on the Switch though. I kind of very fortunate video game wise because my housemate is spending a lockdown with his girlfriend in her house, which, you know, makes sense.
Right.
But he left his Xbox here, and it's like he has one of those, I don't understand Xboxes at all, so it took me a while to get into it. But I wanted to play Witcher 3. I was gonna get it on the Switch, but he was like, I have it on my Xbox, so I'm playing it on that, which is like my first Xbox experience. Because my hands, I've always had this weird thing with Xbox because I have really small hands, and I find the Xbox controller just doesn't quite fit with my hands the way the PlayStation does. But I heard great things about Witcher 3, and it was there, so I've been playing a lot of that, and very much enjoying that.
Okay, and like Witcher 3 is one of those games that I feel like even if you haven't played it, it's kind of been talked to death, and like obviously there's like the Netflix series and that kind of stuff. But putting that all aside, what do you find appealing about it personally?
Well, what I like about it, and I'm gonna go, this might be a bit controversial, but I didn't like Skyrim or the Fallout games as much as everyone else.
Okay.
And the reason that and I know why, the reason I don't like them is the reason why I think Witcher works, and the reason why I love Dragon Age and Vampire is that in Skyrim or in Fallout, you can make all these decisions, but I feel like the character that I'm playing never really feels like a character.
Okay.
You know, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah.
You can kind of do all the side. It just, you make all these decisions, but it feels like nothing really has weight, or you're not a character. Whereas what's really good in The Witcher, although again there's a lot of it's a big decision based game, although you can make decisions, the main character Geralt very much feels like a character, like a person.
Right.
So you never lose sense of that, and even though the decisions you make can be completely different, you still feel like a character, even if you're doing like a bad playthrough. And Gwent is this card game in it, which I'm obsessed with. It's actually hilarious because it's like this silly little card game, and the story is so epic, but I'm focusing on the Gwent storylines, and I find myself accidentally procrastinating the stories because it'll be a thing like, win a Gwent card from, you know, this person, and then you go to talk to them and you end up like starting this big quest, like, no, I just want to play Gwent with you. It's so funny because even like you can be in the middle of a really intense storyline and then a dialogue option just comes up and it's like, play Gwent, and I'm like, yes, I'm playing Gwent with you. Let's, you know, screw looking for your child, let's play Gwent.
Yes, I have that with Final Fantasy X and Blitzball. It's like you're in the middle of the most important thing that ever happened, but you got to go do some sports.
It makes no sense though. It's even funnier than with Blitzball though, because we have played Final Fantasy X, because it comes up as a dialogue option in the middle of intense conversation. And it's kind of really helped me like be the character, because there's this fun element of like me as this video game character is just obsessed with Gwent. It's like my addiction. So like there is this bit where I was following like a Gwent storyline, and I ended up like, win Gwent from this card. So I went, and it ended up being like a brothel, and the woman is like, oh, you're back, have a look at my fine women, and there's options like, oh, let me see your women, and then let's play Gwent. And I'm like, nope, we're just playing Gwent, don't want to see your women, playing Gwent, and then running away.
I just have this lovely image of some other hero finishing the adventure and you're still in a pub somewhere playing Gwent.
Yes. But it's almost too much though. Like Witcher, there's almost too much side quests, especially because I have like the DLC version that has like all of them. I found it quite tricky at the start, and really I kind of went in blind. Like I hadn't seen the series, I hadn't played the first two games, And I always try and play video games in order, even when I'm told I don't have to. Like, I always try to, and I don't regret it. Like, I was told I didn't have to play the first Uncharted and to just play Uncharted 2, but I played the first one first, and I'm really glad I did that. So I kind of regret just going straight into 3 because I didn't really know what was going on. And you know, it was probably my own fault because there's loads of videos on YouTube that like sum up the first 2 games. But now that I've been playing it a bit, I'm kind of figuring out the world a bit, and I think because I don't have the knowledge of from the other 2 characters, the decisions aren't quite as stressful. So I'm kind of just trying to play it as I would play it, you know, and yeah, if that makes sense. So a lot of
Oh,
decision-based games.
okay, so if we kind of had to find a common theme in the games you play, which are, just to refresh, Vampire, the Breath in the Wild, Witcher 3, and to some degree Pokemon as well. You really like games where you do have decisions that you can make and things that can impact the story, but you don't like them to be so Skyrim big that you kind of get lost in them.
I like games with really defined characters.
Okay.
And I think video games, particularly now, is really an art. You know, it's really an art that I think a lot of people forget that. And it's a really, if done right, you can really immerse people in creative stories and worlds.
Yeah,
Um,
you're absolutely right. I think a lovely YouTuber I watch called Pop Culture Detective, he made the point that based on the potential of video games, there is no reason why it shouldn't be the dominant storytelling art form. And yet it isn't. Like, it should be, like, based on the way we can interact with it, and it can change and challenge you and all that kind of stuff. So I completely agree with you there. Like, video, especially now during a lockdown, video games are a fantastic escape from not being
yeah,
able to do our jobs and our theater shows and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, and there's also a nice social element to a lot of them as well. If you play a lot online, I've never been big at playing online. But you're dead right. I think I mean, the reason I love Dragon Age so much is because, you know, I played that going through my first big breakup as a teenager, and it was the only thing that could distract me because I found films couldn't hold my attention, reading books couldn't hold my attention. Whereas because you have to be engaged in a video game for the fighting and to make sure, you know, you don't die,
Yeah.
it kind of forces you to focus on the story.
Okay. Well, that seems like a really good place to start wrapping up. Is there anything else you want to say on the air before we go to the plugs?
I just hope everyone's staying safe and sane. Uh, it's been great just, you know, talking about video games. I have also been on the Animal Crossing bandwagon. I wasn't going to do it. But so that's kind of a nice thing because I just do that, you know, in the morning. I just do it for like a half an hour every day, and then I put it down.
You have much better self-restraint than I do, certainly.
Oh, I was playing a lot at the start, but now that my town's a lot more established, it's kind of, and I don't have as much free time, and I kind of want to focus on Witcher and finishing Vampire. It's kind of like, you know, I'll wake up, I'll look for some fossils, check my mail, make sure that check if there's any visitors, and then off I go.
Excellent.
Pretend I have friends.
You've got friends.
I do. Thank you, Keen. This has been lovely. I hope there's been some interesting tidbits in my ramblings. I've forgotten how to talk to people.
No, this has been absolutely fantastic. So far, we have been very board game heavy in this series. So it was delightful to get some proper video game recommendations. Where can people find you if they want to look up your theater work or just social media or whatever?
Oh, yes. So Saoirse Sine, so Sine, Sine Fada on Instagram, Saoirse Ball on Twitter, but mainly Scream for Ireland. Just Scream for Ireland on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram. And just want a whole lot of love. And in this time, I think we got to support each other. I do miss board games, though. This was a very I think because I'm not with a lot of people, like it's just me and my mom is kind of half blind. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to jumping back in on after this is all finished. But for now, yeah, it's gotta be video games.
Well, if you want to do board games over Zoom, Oisin Wallace on our second episode, and then Martin Kieran on our third episode, they have lots of recommendations for games that you can play over Zoom. So they might be worth checking out.
Lovely. Yeah, I might do because I do have some friends. Before all this, I was doing Risk Legacy, which was like you add to it every time, so you play this with the same people, and it was getting pretty intense. We had like 3 games left, so that's just sitting there. But yeah, I hope everyone's okay. I hope you're okay.
Yeah, we're all good here. Don't you worry. Excellent. So thank you very much, Saoirse. You can find her at Saoirse Shanae, Saoirse Ball, or indeed Scream for Ireland, her company. We're going to take a quick break, and then the Game Corner will be back right after 1 or 2 little messages. Stay with us.
Alright, so you're listening to the podcast, you're like, hey, I'm not in Ireland, how do I get in touch? Well, TuneIn has you covered. That's how you can check us out live when we're on the radio. You go to TuneIn and download the app, or you can check out the live streams on nerdtoknowmedia.com or Phoenix 92.5 FM. If you want to get in contact with us, it's very easy. Nerd to Know Media everywhere. Nerd to Know Media on Twitter, Nerd to Know Media Instagram, Nerd to Know Media on Twitch, Nerd to Know Media at gmail.com if you want to reach out via email. Hope to hear from you soon.
Are you a nerd? Do you like hearing about a bizarre range of topics from the world of nerd? Does your heart and hairstyle still belong in the nostalgic 90s? Are you a sucker for spooky weirdo things? Well, whether you're a hardcore nerd or a vanilla ice baby, Straight Outta Canto is the podcast radio show for you! Straight Outta Canto, that's Kanto, Ireland's #1 show for nerd culture, nightmares, nostalgia, and more. Straight Outta Canto.
And welcome back to the Game Corner. Thank you very much to Saoirse Shanae, who was on in our first half. Sticking with our theatre-themed episode, we now have a very good friend of mine, Rory Dunne, who is an opera singer, and actually whom we were in the same class together in college. Rory, how are you doing?
Hey, how are you doing? I'm good, thanks. Just getting through the lockdown as well as I can. It's not been too bad. I mean, there's been no work, which is a pain, but yeah, I thought the whole isolation thing would be worse than it was for me. But I guess as a musician, I spend most of my time just sitting at a piano by myself anyway, so it's fine.
Yes, well, speaking of the music, we're going to talk about that in a sec. But this is actually your second podcast appearance very recently. Would you like to talk about your first one?
Yeah, I guess I've never really experienced podcasts other than listening to them. But I guess there's a lot of nice ones coming up, which is a good silver lining of the bad situation we're in, I think. And my friend Connor Prendeville, he is an older opera singer, and he started one up called the Herd Community, in which he kind of interviews opera singers and music professionals and that sort of thing about how their experience of the lockdown in opera has been, but also he just asked them to speak about a certain type of music. I ended up doing Desert Island Deaths, so my top 10 favorite deaths in opera. So yeah, did a bit of that. That's nice. It's you should check it out if you can, anyone.
Yeah, it's up on YouTube and Spotify and all the like.
Spotify, yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, it's well worth it for the animation of you talking in the start, like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to actually talk about that because you were talking about the best opera deaths. The first show we did together had you dying a pretty good death in a Greek play, didn't it?
Yeah, Heracles. Yeah, the
That's
women
it.
of
Yeah.
Trachis or Trachis. I can
That's
never
it.
remember.
Yeah.
That. God, that's a shout back. I forgot about that almost. I just remember. Yeah, there was a lot of funny things on that show. That was good. That was a good crack though.
That was great.
I miss Bull Alley. I miss doing plays. They're a lot different than operas.
I missed that as well. I thought about it actually because you tell some really good stories about opera deaths. And I remember in that show, you did the best saving throw I've ever seen in the theater show, where you were supposed to be killed by a cape, and someone, instead of putting the cape in, put in like a red t-shirt with like a game over thing on it.
I completely forgot about that. It said the word game over.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never seen like it's like it was a big Greek play. There was like 20 odd of us on stage, all kind of getting the same
Oh
thought at the same
my
time. And if you were
god.
panicking, you didn't show it. Like you just wrapped it around your neck and saved the show. Like,
Keith, that memory was completely gone out of my head until now. I think I blocked it out because I'd had a panic attack. So thanks for that. Oh,
sorry.
that's so funny. I completely now remember exactly the feeling of what happened, and also just trying to not let the audience see the logo and like trying to drape it over myself real pathetically.
Because it wasn't even a
That's
big
so funny.
T-shirt. Like it was a
No,
small
it's
enough one.
tiny, and I'm a big guy, so I was just like, "Oh, here we go. Strap in, people. The cuckoo's nest gotta treat that night. The cuckoo's nest's gone now. It went by the last year.
Yes, sadly, I think it
All
isn't anymore.
apartments now.
The pub
Yeah,
might still be there, but I'm pretty sure the theater's
yeah,
gone,
yeah. It is.
unfortunately.
Yeah. To be fair, it was rat infested and haunted probably as well.
Oh, definitely. Like, I mean, you didn't feel right being in that theater. Like something was gonna go
No.
down. Like, but I do miss it though.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Sticking with the kind of theater stuff before we get into the games.
Yeah,
How
yeah, yeah.
you mentioned like you've lost work over this. What's like? How's that been like treating you? Like?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone in most industries is kind of the same. Not all of them, but like a lot of the arts industries, especially. So the last thing I would have had on was Carmen and the Board Gosh with Irish National Opera, which ended up being they pulled the plug on it about 2 weeks before it was going on stage, maybe a week and a half before it was going on stage. But so there's been a lot of losses like that. Blackwater Valley Opera Festival. A few other things during the summer, Opera Collective Ireland, and a tour from Cork of Vaughan Williams opera. But I mean, in as many times as the companies can afford to, or the companies are accommodated to, they've been paying us, if not our full fee, a portion of them for some of them, which I've been really lucky for, because I know a lot of people who have just been let go from their jobs and have had to either go on the COVID payment or look for some other sort of emergency work. But yeah, I think at the moment I'm doing okay, considering that I've got like half of my wages from the time I would have missed. And luckily, I'm not spending any money because I'm just sitting at home.
Yes, I believe you. It's not one of the games you're going to talk about today. You clocked up an impressive amount of Animal Crossing hours or something like
Oh God, yeah, 250 hours plus, I'd say, yeah, which is a pathetic statistic, but it's not like I have anything else to do.
You might as well
And
get involved with the
considering,
community.
yeah, that's it. Considering the amount of hours I put in, my island should be far more impressive than it is.
All right, on that positive note, we'll swap
Yeah,
into the games you want to talk about today. So I believe you've got a few
yeah.
board games today.
Yeah, I do. So I've got the first one I have. When you asked me to just pick one, I kind of looked at the first one on the shelf that I don't know, that brings good memories. Is Betrayal at the House on the Hill. It's
Yes. So take us
described
through
as
that
a
then.
strategy game by
we
Blue Glass.
Ooh, lovely. We've had Oisin Power and Fiona Power recommending it, but they didn't quite have as much time to get into details. So why don't you tell us
Yeah,
about it?
yeah, cool. So I mean, the first thing I'll do is I'll read the actual game overview from one of the 3 rule books that you're given. Um, so in Betrayal at the House on the Hill, each player chooses an explorer to investigate a creepy old house. So out of these explorers, they all have different sort of stats. So you've got these kind of, what are they, pentagons, which have your character, 2 characters, one on each side, and you get to pick whichever one you're doing. And there's actually miniatures that go with them, which they're quite a nice. I was impressed by this for the price of the game. The actual cards and tiles and miniatures are really well put together, and they're quite sturdy and well painted, which isn't always the case, I think, with a
Yeah,
lot of
I've got to
games.
say, more often than not, we've had to paint the figures ourselves, which is great fun.
Yeah,
But it's very
these
impressive
are
seeing them going to the effort.
yeah,
Like,
that's true. Yeah, these are really nice. They're all quite, and they all range from like they all have quite great names as well. Professor Longfellow, who's and they give you a rundown. Age 57, height 5'11", weight 153 pounds, and hobbies: Gaelic music, drama, fine wines, and then it gives you the birthday of the character as well. And then each character is broken down into 4 different what would you call them? Like they have 4 different skills. So speed, might, sanity, and knowledge. So within the game, these range up from 0 to 7. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are eight numbers going up in various degrees of between 1 and 7. And as the game progresses, your might or sanity or speed or knowledge can be dropped or raised a certain amount, which helps you do better at certain tasks. But if any of them gets down to the skull at the bottom, your character's dead.
Okay, well then, what's the goal of this game? Are you all working
Yeah,
together? Are you getting through a
you
maze?
are.
Like,
So
what's
there are
the thing?
two.
Yeah.
There are two main sections to the house. So in the first section, you explore the house and you discover new rooms. So it's a tile flipping adventure in that sense. You start off with your. It's kind of a longer tile than the rest. It's like a long rectangle, which is the entrance hall, the foyer, and the grand staircase. And out of two of these rooms have two exits on each side, and pretty much you can go. There are three levels to the house. There's the basement, the upper, and the main level, the like ground level. So you have to one tile at a time explore each room, and based on your speed is how many. So once a room is explored, that's your action taken up. And as you flip these rooms out, they'll have different symbols on them. So I have them here in front of me, and I'll flip a random ground floor one over. Oh, and I got the coal chute, which is a one-way slide to the basement landing. So you flip that over, and your character goes straight down into the basement, and you're separated from the rest of the party pretty much. But there's a lot of interesting cards and that sort of stuff. Just and a few of them have symbols on them. So there are three types of cards that you can get. There are two types of cards. Oh no, are there? There are three. Yeah. So you can get item cards which pop up, and they can be things like. Hold on, I'll just pick out a random one here. So dark dice. Are you feeling lucky? Once per turn, you can roll three. You can roll three dice, and the result is based on this. So if you get a 0, you reduce all of your traits to the lowest value of the skull symbol and discard the dark dice. On 1, you draw an event card. On 2, you gain 1 mental trait, which are your 2 traits, either sanity or knowledge. Then 3, immediately move into the adjacent room, no movement cost. 4, gain 1 in a physical trait, which are your speed and might. And then 5, move 1 other explorer into the same room. Into the same room, that's in the same room as you, into an adjacent room. Or 6, move the location of any explorer not revealed as the traitor, which we'll come to.
Okay, so before we kind of get into the traitor stuff, like, is
Yeah.
this for a large group of people? Would it be for kind
Yeah,
of like?
so 3 to 6 players, I think, is the prescribed number of people. Yeah, 3 to 6 players, it says. I've played it with up to 6 people. I mean, I'm not sure if you can get an expansion or if there are any other versions of it. I haven't actually found out, but yeah, I played it with 6 people, and I think it's better in bigger groups. Just due to the nature of it. So you're all working together from the start, entering new rooms, finding things, and just trying to explore the house and figure out what's happening. And as you continue on and get more items and things, and events can happen in the rooms as well. So it might be like you run into a cobweb, and you have to try and escape, or I don't know, you find a hanged man in the room, and as you come across these things, you roll a dice, and that will either give you a negative thing happening or a positive thing happening. So that all kind of adds up, and then as you continue on, eventually the events, you roll a dice, and as more events come up, the more likely it is that an omen card will come up. And the omen cards, once a certain amount of omen cards come up, you have to roll the dice against the odds, and the more omen cards there are, the more likely it is that the second part of the game is revealed, the betrayal. So the further you go on, the more likely it is that the betrayal will happen.
Okay, so it
And
sounds like
yeah,
just to cut across you there for a quick sec. It sounds
yeah,
like this
go
is a
ahead.
very involved game, but is it
Yeah,
difficult to
definitely.
is it difficult to pick up though?
I no, it actually isn't. Because actually, the one thing, the rule book is really good. I found it quite easy to follow based on rule book. If you just read through it once before you start with everyone you have, maybe, or especially, I mean, as with all games, the best way to play it is with someone who's played it before
Yeah.
a few times, preferably. But yeah, I found it quite an easy game to pick up, I think. But also, I mean, I think it takes aspects of a lot of other little games. So I mean, obviously Dungeons and Dragons has a bit of a an influence on it, but yeah, and any tile flipping games where you explore, it's all quite reliable, and it has a formula that it sticks to without being boring, which I like.
Okay, and who would you kind of typically play this with then?
So once, well, it used to be once every couple of weeks, I'd meet up with my sisters and my cousins, kind of a family thing where they'd usually come over to my house, and we would a group of us sit around and we'd play a different board game each time. But we've started playing this one a bit more often, which has been nice, especially because it's games like, I mean, certain people, one of my sisters especially really likes Pandemic, the game Pandemic,
Yeah.
because of the working together against the game aspect of it.
Well,
she's
I'm
not
glad
into
you
the
brought that
whole-
up actually, Rory,
Yeah.
because we've had a few board gamers on the show so far, and a lot of them have been saying that even when they play board games across Zoom or whatever, they want to do cooperative games, because if you're
Yeah.
only seeing people sporadically, there isn't necessarily that instinctive competitiveness. Now, the tabletop cork vetoed that idea, but for the most part, people have been leaning towards the cooperative games so far.
Yeah, I would get that. I mean, especially in these times where it's kind of like any sort of virtual hug you can give each other, or a
Yeah,
virtual high five
that's a
is
really nice
welcome,
way
I
of putting
guess.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I absolutely love if destroying someone in a game all the same. I mean, that's why a lot of people play Call of Duty online, I suppose. It's not. I mean, I guess I'm not overly competitive with my Animal Crossing career. But, I think after
oh,
250 hours, you're allowed to call it a career.
could you imagine if they mixed those two games together and suddenly you had to defend your island?
Murdering a lot of animals on an island.
Given all of your like rabbits who live in the village, like arming them to the teeth.
Yeah, I'd play that. I'm looking forward to the release of that. Yeah.
All right. Well, then, until that's
Amazing.
released, why is this game on your mind now? Like, obviously, you can't play it with as many people. Like, but what do you
Yeah,
find
you can't play
appealing
with-
about Betrayal? Like,
Yeah, but the actual betrayal itself is what is kind of the most interesting aspect of the game. So at some random point during the game, one explorer will trigger a scenario called a haunt.
right?
So this haunt is revealed, and one explorer becomes the traitor, bent on defeating his or her former companions. So the rest of the explorer become heroes struggling to survive, and from then on, the game is a fight between the traitor and the heroes, often to the death. So there are 50 haunts in the game, and each one has a different story. They're all in a separate rule book. There are three. So you've got the survival guide, and then you've got the traitor's tome. So the traitor takes the traitor's tome, and you would each match up. So say pick a random number between 1 and 50 there.
Grind. 42 there.
Yeah, 42. Great. Let's see. So 42. Here come ours. Yeah, it says comes the hero. So I'll read you a little there's a little blurb and everything. So the blurb is immortality is something most people would pay anything for. That's why you're amazed that yours came so cheaply. All you needed to do is open a little gateway to hell, and your master will let you keep this gift forever. Even though you're immortal, time's a wasting.
Just a little one,
too
like,
long
you know.
before opening the gate. Yeah, exactly. So it gives you things. So like right now, your explorer is still in the game, but has turned traitor. You can raise any traits of yours below its starting number to that number. And if you don't already have a weapon card, such as the revolver or axe or blood dagger, search through the item and omen stack and take the first weapon you come to, and then shuffle the stack. So then the heroes are working against you, trying to close it. You win if you open the gate to hell, and then it says how you open the gate. So you must sacrifice one of the heroes using a weapon, then bring the body to the catacombs, chasm, or pentagram chamber, which will be flipped up randomly. At this point of the game, if you haven't got those tiles, they'll flip up one of them randomly, so there's a way to lose or win. Once the body's in one of those rooms, you can attempt a sanity roll to open the gate to hell. and you can attempt that once in your turn. So your traits don't go up or down because you're immortal in this situation. So they have to find. Items can't be stolen from you, and your movement can't be slowed down. And you can't be attacked and don't take damage from card effects or room effects. So the idea is that they have to find out a way to kill you. So I'll match it up 42 on the survival guide for the explorers. So they get a different little blurb, which is a statue stands before you, its hand outstretched as if imploring you to place something in it. A message has been carved into the podium beneath the statue. To defeat the undefeatable. What could that mean? And why are you shivering uncontrollably? Something has just gone very wrong, and this statue might be your only means to stop things from going bad or worse. So, they're pretty much told similar details, but not the same things. So some things about the traitor, but not everything. And the traitor obviously doesn't know how they're planning on stopping the traitor either. So I think within this one, you animate this statue as a sort of golem sort of a thing, and the statue is the only thing that can kill the traitor. So they have to set that out in the house to try and follow the traitor, and pretty much so if he or she does the sacrifice, they win the game, and if the players stop them, then that's the game over in favor of the heroes. And there's so that's just one thing from it. There's a load of different things. One of the ones we had was that a load of undead get set out through the castle, and the traitor controls them, and everyone else has to try and stop them with certain items that they've collected and that sort of stuff. But it brings this whole sort of level of tension from exploring the game in the first half, and everyone's like, "Oh, look what I found!" It's just 0 to 90 in a second, and it's just I hate you. You have to, it always ends up with the other person going outside and reading the trader book in a different room so they can't hear the other people speak and that sort of thing. And it's a really fun sort of a thing. And I can't decide whether it's more fun to be the trader or working together as the hero. Both are a lot of fun. I've only ever played it with large groups though. I'd be interested to see what it's like with 3 people.
Oh God, it'd be so
completely
powerful.
different
Like a
game.
traitor among 1 and 3 of you.
Yeah,
Like you go
although I'd say
crazy
it's-
pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know who the traitor is the other thing. So, but I mean, yeah, it's a very fun game, and yeah, the board is very nicely set up. There's a whole list of a whole big board of tokens and everything like that. And you've also the omen cards are quite impressive. They're things like you get a companion dog that goes around with you. Which is really, it can drag items to where you are and that sort of stuff. What else is there? Another companion you can get girl, or weapons like spears, or just little items like a mask that gives you different attributes and different skills. But yeah, I would very much recommend the game for anyone. It's a lot of fun. Trying to think what the player time is usually about an hour, I think.
Oh,
Maybe the
really?
first
For
time
something with that much variety, I was expecting to be much longer.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, because things can move quite quickly. The first time you play it, if no one's played it before, if you're explaining rules to someone, that could be increased a lot, maybe even an hour and a half, an hour 40. But I mean, I'd say once you get into the swing of it, the game generally runs in about an hour, I'd say.
Okay. And that's absolutely fantastic. Now we have about, say, 4 or 5 minutes left. Is there any other games you want to recommend before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I was going to shoot you what I'm playing at the moment. I mean, Pandemic, I mentioned earlier, that's what someone else spoke about was the last episode? Or
it was in
the
episode 2,
ago?
yeah. Funnily enough, actually, a few people have asked to do Pandemic. It's between that and I think Plague Inc. For some reason, Pandemic games are incredibly popular now for some reason.
Yeah, I can't imagine why. COVID-19. I've been playing that, and then I've been playing Catan as well, Settlers of Catan, which is I think it's just one of those classic games. Catan very much reminds me of Ticket to Ride, Have you had it?
Yes,
Have
I
you ever
could
played
not
Ticket
wrap
to
my head
Ride?
around the
I
rules of
love
Ticket
that
to Ride.
game. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely love games like that. It's like a not to rip on it, but it's like kind of a dumbed down version of Risk, which I quite like,
Okay.
and not as intense as Risk, and the whole getting resource things like you do in Catan. Um, those sort of games I think can be a lot of fun because it's like, it's always the first person to 10 points, and you're trying to see. It's an easier way because I'm not by no means a big tactician, and I think those sort of games are about the amount of tactics that my head can grasp, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been playing a few of them with my housemates, Catan more so because I haven't got a copy of Ticket to Ride here. And then other than that, I've been playing quite a bit of Dungeons and Dragons, which I hadn't played in about 2 years.
Yeah,
We
you had a
used to
pretty
have a
big
game.
group going for a while there, didn't
We
you?
did. We had a really fun campaign that we used to play maybe every 2 weeks or every week sometimes. But as life goes, some of our members ended up moving abroad to England, some to Cavan, and two of our members had kids together, and so they got two children now, and things had really wound up. So it was just it was very hard to play, but we were all kind of in contact still, and we were like, oh, I'm still got this character sitting here, and then randomly one of the guys got in touch and he was like, have you guys ever used Roll20 online? And we were like, no. So he set up our campaign from where it stopped on this website Roll20, which I'd never heard about until recently, which has been really good for running campaigns. You just enter your details in, and you can generate maps and that sort of stuff on it. Roll the dice digitally, that sort of stuff, so you don't have to trust people. Oh, another natural 20. What do you know?
Who'd have thought?
Yes, yeah. So I've been playing I kind of benched my character. I've been playing a dwarf barbarian for a long time, and I'm now playing a human variant storm cleric or tempest cleric. A follower of Thor that calls lightning down on people, and I love Dungeons and Dragons. It's yeah, something I come back to every so often. I'm just like, oh, why did I stop playing this? It's so good.
I'm noticing a
Uh,
pattern with all the games you picked between Betrayal and you mentioned off the air Azul and all that kind of stuff. That you
yeah,
seem to be really drawn to games where you can like build a long road or a long map,
yeah,
like in each
absolutely. Yeah,
every
well,
time.
Azul
Is there a
doesn't have
particular?
maps, but it does have patterns, and
Yeah, yeah.
especially games that are. I quite like games that are visually, aesthetically pleasing. But also I love the whole character building of Dungeons and Dragons. That there's a continuum in it. That whole it's like those legacy games. I've never played any of the legacy games myself. I know you can get legacy versions of Pandemic and Possible. I don't know about Betrayal of the House on the Hill, but do you know? Have you ever played any of them? The
The
legacy
legacy
ones.
games? No, I haven't. No,
Yeah. Or have you heard of them, or
I have.
what
Yeah, yeah,
exactly is involved? I don't know anything about them other than they go on. Like it's a campaign that continues on. I was like, that's quite cool in one way. But then I suppose once you get to the end of that, you can't really play it again, I think.
yeah.
Which
Well.
is
See,
interesting.
in my regard, like we have a little baby, so the board games we play are ones that can be done in half an hour to an hour while she's napping. So the thought of
Absolutely.
trying to play a game that lasts weeks is just way
Oh yeah.
beyond me. Like,
That's an absolute fair thing to say. I'm just sitting here on my own in the house, I have no responsibilities. You're actually forming a human, teaching it how to
oh,
talk and everything.
oh, stop! Like, I mean, if it wasn't for like Simpsons on Disney Plus, like we wouldn't manage.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, thank God. Yeah, thank God for streaming services as well. Been
Yeah, I
watching a lot of stuff.
suppose if the internet goes down, like, I think we'll go to like Mad Max future incredibly quickly.
Oh, I'll be the first one out there beheading people in my steel tongue.
You'll become your dwarf barbarian character.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I joke. I would not last 5 minutes in that sort of world. I think I'd be one of the first to go in some horrific accident.
Funnily enough, that is quite operatic. Like, sort of
Yeah.
you
Oh,
charging out there,
absolutely. Yeah.
bellowing, like.
And then instantly dead.
Right.
True to my art form.
Right, so we are just about out of time. Is there anything games related or otherwise you want to mention on the air?
Oh, I mean, no, that's me covered. I think for the moment, I think any those are the board games I've been playing for the last while, and the games I love. But yeah, check out Azul. We didn't really talk about it there, but you brought it up again. That's another excellent game. That's sort of it's a quick one, but it's a little bit strategy. But for some reason, it's such any sort of gaming channels I might watch on YouTube, it had always popped up again. People would be like, just it's always one of those fringe games that people are like, oh yeah, you should definitely check out Azul. And when I checked it, I was like, I don't know why I love this, but I love this game. It's
I
excellent.
know. It's my old flatmate got it just before I moved out, and I was like, well, why do you
Oh
like it?
yeah,
And they kind of went, it's just so pretty.
yeah. It's very pretty and it's also quick. It's quick like have you ever played Secret Hitler?
No, what?
See, you should get someone on. You should get someone who knows more about it to talk
Dude,
about
you
Secret
cannot
Hitler.
drop a secret Hitler in the last minute
I
of the
just
episode.
dropped the Secret Hitler bomb, but I've only played it once or twice. My cousin brought it over, but it's a short but funny game in where it's kind of like a hidden. It's like you've got a wolf among the sheep, sort of a thing, and three people are fascists. One of them is Hitler, and everyone else was kind of on the good side.
Yeah. All
I
right,
shouldn't put that in
we're gonna
inverted
have to
commas.
have you back on to talk about Secret Hitler and Azul in a few weeks.
I'll
Assuming
have
you
to
haven't
order
gone
it in the meantime.
assuming you haven't gone like full Mad Max opera, then we're gonna have
Well,
to
who
arrange
knows?
that.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for having me on, Keen.
No worries. Thank you so much for giving up the time for this. Like, I really appreciate
Yeah,
it. Like,
anytime. Yeah, no, I'm happy to have someone to talk to and something fun to talk about.
well, I mean, in all seriousness, that is kind of the appeal of games right now. It's great. Right, well, on that slightly downbeat note, we'll call time on the game corner. We'll be back this Friday at 1 o'clock. Rory Dunne, thank you very much. Hope to talk again soon.
Thank you very much.
Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.